Today I want to talk about responsive font sizes with a little bonus of max width. So you'll see on this page, as I'm shrinking the viewport or the screen size, the browser window, the headlines are slowly shrinking. So I've set a minimum font size and a maximum font size depending on the viewport size. You can do some of this in Bubble, but watch the H1 display 2XL and see how it jumps a size as I'm shrinking it down. I'm Mike Collins, and this is part of my redoing of a style guide, or updating a style guide that I put together for one of my SaaS products. So we're going to accomplish this with something called Clamp. And this has been around since 2020 in the browsers. You can see right here, it says widely available since July of 2020. So yes, we're going to be writing a little bit of CSS. And what happens in Clamp is that you're setting them a minimum value that you want at the smallest size, and you want a maximum value at the largest size. And then the bit in between that is an expression that is going to then allow it to go from the large to the small, or the small to the large, depending on which way you go. And so Clamp, you can even look at caniuse.com and put in Clamp, and you can see that it has 96% support in the browsers across the globe. And most of these, the major ones, 2020, and earlier this year, there's been some updates and some releases on some other, I guess you would say not major, but minor browsers. Although I'm sure they don't think that way. So the way that it works, or here's a graph that sort of explains it better. So you can set at 400 is the size that I want it to reach its smallest value. So at 400, it's going to reach 24 pixels. The largest size is at 1,000 pixels wide for the screen, the viewport. It's going to reach 36 pixels. And in between that, it's going to slowly come down pixel by pixel until it reaches its smallest size. And if you Google, and I'll put all this in the description, but if you Google font size clamp generator, you can come up with a ton of generators. So that's much easier than trying to figure it out all yourself, but I will also put this article in there that really goes into the math of Clamp and how it works. There's also, I'll put this in, this is a scale, type scale. So you can set what your body copy is going to be. And by the way, with browsers, the default is 16, but somebody could always come along and say, I want my browser set at 18. So you'll notice here, it says 2.986 rem instead of pixels. And so what rem is a relative size to the pixel. So pixel is fixed. So if we have our browser at 16 pixels as the default, that's fixed at that pixel. that would equal 1 rem. But if somebody comes along and says, I want my body size to be 20, and they go into the browser settings or system settings and they change it, the body size is going to be 20. By using REMs, now your 1 rem, instead of equals 16 pixels, is going to equal 20 pixels. So it's relative to the base or the root or the HTML element, so the document element. And over on the right side of the screen, they're showing you what it would look like at those sizes. I am using, updating this, I'm using what the untitled UI sizes are. So this is 72, the XL is 60, the large is 48, the medium is 36, the small is 24. So I'm using those as my baselines. So when I set the headline at this larger size, it's 72. But as I shrink down, it's going to go to 48. Because I put my largest 72, I put the smallest at 48. So if we look over here, at 72 and 48, it's coming down. So I'm going to follow that same pattern with this H2, which is display large. And so it starts at 60 and then comes down to 36. It may look larger on your screen because I do have this at 150%. Okay. So what does it normally look like? This is what it normally looks like. You'll notice that this has a max width of 65 characters, where this does not have a max width to it. We'll start with that. So in Bubble, what you can do is you can go into Layout and you can say, oh, well, I want it 640. So if we look at it, it now is 640. How many characters is it? I don't know, but it's round about, if we look here, so it's probably 60 characters instead of 65, which is great. You want to keep your characters width between 55 and 75, and that has to do with making it comfortable for people to read whatever it is that you have on there, whether it's just a paragraph to explain what your app is, or if it's a blog article. You want to keep it within that range of characters. But this is kind of a pain because I can't set this width in my style. I have to set it individually on each one. So the way we're going to do this is with some CSS. So the first thing that I want to check is that under Settings, on the left-hand side, under General, we want to scroll all the way to the bottom, and at the very bottom, it has this Expose the option to add an ID attribute. You want to make sure that that is checked on, or that it's checked. It is going to be, if you've never looked there, it will not be checked by default. I then want to go to Plugins, and I want to make sure that I have my Classify, not my Classify, Julian's Classify, the plugin Classify installed. And then we'll go back to the page. And I'm going to put on an HTML element. I'm going to put this at the top. And I'm going to call it Style Sheet. I'm going to open the HTML editor. And I put my opening style tag and my closing style tag. So that's the less than sign, the word style, greater than. And for closing, you just the only difference after the beginning bracket, you put a forward slash and that closes it. And then I want to make some space between those two. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a dot and then the word my and then paragraph. So this is going to be all one word. And I'm capitalizing the P, space, open curly bracket, return, close curly bracket. Sometimes I have an issue with either too many curly brackets or not enough curly brackets. So I always want to make sure that I'm opening and closing them right for the beginning. So then I want to add some space between that. And I'm going to type in max hyphen width colon. And I'm going to put 65 characters, CH, 65 CH. And because Bubble puts inline styles, we have to use the important tag on pretty much any CSS that we are writing. Hopefully someday we won't have to do that, but that is what it is. So, just for the heck of it, sometimes I know my spelling, I'm going to copy the my paragraph class. I close that before I go anywhere else. I'm going to go to layout on the style sheet, unchecked. This element is visible and collapse when hidden. On some of your plugins, you need to have some of them visible. On this particular one, you don't need to, so that's great. So now let's go down to our paragraph and down under the appearance tab under ID attribute. We're going to open curly bracket, add class, all one word, capital C, colon, space, open quote, paste in my paragraph, close quote, close curly bracket. So now what we should see is when we refresh, to make sure I'm on the right page, yes. Oh. Okay. So looking back at my style sheet, I spelt important incorrectly. So let's see if that works when you spell something correctly. Yay, that worked. So that's one thing down. So as we shrink, let's watch the end of the paragraph. So when you see one word on the next line, that is called an orphan. And if there's 2 or 3 words on the last line, that's called a widow. And what we don't want. We definitely don't want orphans. We don't want that. And that happens on everything. You want to try and keep that from happening. That's not a good look. So back to our style sheet. We want to add a new line. Text hyphen wrap colon. And there are two different ones that you can have. One of them is called balance and the other one is called pretty. So let's do pretty for the paragraph. And then spell important, right? And let's save. Go see what that's done. So now as we shrink it down, you know, where we were getting orphans before, we're not getting the orphan. We are getting widows, but that's fine because it has a couple of words with it. So that is what pretty is doing for us. It's keeping that looking pretty. So now let's go ahead and do this H2, the display large, and this one we're going to want a clamp. So let's go to our little generator. The largest one is 60, the smallest one is 36, and I just want to copy this and go back to our style sheet. So above my paragraph, I'm going to put H2. I don't need to put the period because this is an HTML element, the H2, where the my paragraph is assigning a class to an element. So we're doing our open curly bracket, closing curly bracket. We're going to put the space in, then we're going to paste in our font size clamp. So again, what we're going to have to do is put the exclamation mark important, and we'll save and go look. So now as I shrink this down, you'll see that it's smoothly getting smaller. But you know, we still have our orphans. So let's go back and underneath the font size, we're going to put text wrap. And this time let's put balance. And again, important. Oops, important. Let's check that out. And right now, there's no character max width to the H2, so it's not, you know, it's not really matching up with the paragraph underneath. But you know, that works in some cases. In some cases, you probably want it to somewhat look like it's matching up. But you'll notice that it's balanced. So each line is balanced. And if we start shrinking this, again, the lines are balanced. So we may not, you know what, we may not even have to put a character max width on the H2. And you'll see that there's no widows or orphans. It's just balancing out the headline. But you could use balance for paragraphs as well. The reason I didn't do that is because then it would really start to play with the end of this and make it all look like one block, where at least if there's a widow, it adds some interest, or it breaks it up. So now you'll see our H1 is still jumping. So if we go to the H1, what I did in the styles, and this is the way that Bubble wants you to do it, is in a style. And if you don't use the style sheets, this is the way that you would do it, is you then set the conditions in here. But if we look at this little handy extension that shows me various screen sizes for various iPhones, Galaxies. We have a medium screen, a Pixel 3. So there are there could be hundreds of screen sizes. Maybe not hundreds and hundreds, but a lot of different screen sizes. And what this does is it will set it so that it looks good on any screen size without having to set each size. So this is 414 wide. These are pixels, 375 wide, 412, 360. You don't want to keep having to go into these conditions and set different conditions. And you can have this as a backup if you want, because what we're doing is we're going to override the conditions that are in Bubble, because they're setting it what's called inline. So we not only have classes, and what we're writing is a style sheet, and the style sheet is separate from the element itself. So ours would end up being part of these classes, where this style, this is a very old way of styling an element. So they're putting this what's called inline, and this overrides any class that's there. So if there's something that's the same, the style, inline style, gets priority, where when we're setting the important flag, that's the thing that's getting the priority, is whatever is set to important. So let's just finish up on this. So let's go back to our style sheet. And above our H2, we're going to put an H1. And really, I can just copy this, paste it there. Let's go to our little generator. That's 72, 48 for the minimum, and copy the clamp. And replace. We just have to get rid of this semicolon down there because that's an extra one. We don't need that. So now let's go see what that looks like. And you'll see that it's smoothly shrinking down to a smaller screen size. And I do realize that we're the only ones that really do this to see how it looks. But you know what, if I'm on a big page like this and I'm using something as a reference, I will myself keep a window here as reference while I'm working in the other window. So that's really the bulk of this. Now, what you can do, this is extra credit, is we're going to set a few things in what's called the root. So these are variables that we're setting. So we can take our clamps. So say you can copy this. The idea behind the style guide project is to then be able to copy it or duplicate it for a new project. And if the new project has different sizes, then you're going to want a place that has one place to change out those sizes. So the 36 to 48, right? No, 72 to 48. So 48 to 72. I'm doing hyphen fluid, and then hyphen 48 hyphen 72. Even though this has rem, so 3 rem is 48, 72 is 4.5 rem. So I'm going to take this clamp, copy it, put that up here, put a semicolon. So now in my H1, I can put in var, because this is a variable, copy my naming, and within the brackets, replace the clamp numbers with the variable name. So if we save that and we go take a look, we shouldn't see any change. So it still is smoothly shrinking. So now if on my next project, this 48 to 72, so probably needs to be something different. It could be fluid H1, and that way you're not putting any sort of size, but you know that this is a fluid H1. And you can just change the size here up in the root, and it will change it anywhere that you have this fluid H1. So if you have different paragraphs that use this size, so maybe, well, I'll leave the naming convention up to you, but you see where I'm going. So that's it for this one. Let me know if you want to go deeper in this subject. If not, I will move on. Thank you. Have a good weekend.